G'day ladies and gents, and welcome back to DCS World with Mags, and well, today we are going to have a little bit of fun. As I recently posted on my social media, I have been having a little fun with mods recently, as may be apparent, and yes, we will be taking a look at that F-22 Raptor at some point in the future. It's a lot of fun for something that, let's be honest, is probably not all that accurate, but what we're flying today is, at least as far as I've been able to find out, incredibly accurate. This is the Aermacchi MB-339. It's an Italian-developed jet trainer light attack aircraft. I'm probably pronouncing the name slightly wrong there, but I know these things as Macchis because the RAAF used to fly these, or not this version, not the 339. The RAAF used to fly the 326, I think it was, which is the model of the model that was developed previous to the 339 that we see here. Regardless, this mod is absolutely fantastic. I'm sure some of you will remember my video on the A4 Skyhawk mod from a little while ago. I really do need to revisit that. That was a fantastic mod, and in many ways it was almost indistinguishable from the actual proper release aircraft that were inside of DCS. It was a mod that, you know, with Eagle Dynamics' blessing, a little bit of money obviously for licensing, and just a very small amount of extra time, could have been quite easily converted over to being an official mod. You see exactly the same thing here with the MB-339. The detail work on this is incredible, even though the mod is actually currently marked as being early access and having some features that are still not currently functional. Now, I haven't come across too many of these just yet, and none of it has been major. Keeping in mind I've only had a few flights in the aircraft at this time, but one of the things I've noticed, for example, is while you can hear the switch clicking to turn the external lights on and off, you can't actually turn the lights on and off. The external lights don't seem to activate. That also could be a level of incompetence on my behalf. I may be missing a switch somewhere in the cockpit. I don't think I am. And yes, the cockpit is fully clickable. You won't see a mouse cursor rolling around my screen at the moment. Something was messing up with my recording on this particular video, and for some reason my recording software wasn't recording the cursor. It was only recording the background. But the cockpit is fully clickable, and you'll see me playing with the HUD here soon enough to bring up the reticle for this mission. Anyways, the light to the right-hand side of the HUD that just went out was the nose wheel steering light. I've just turned it off, and it is time to take off. Flaps are down. Only really two settings on the flaps, down and up, which, yeah, makes sense. 100% throttle. With the nose wheel steering off, I'm using the toe brakes to maintain a straight level run on the road, although I got a little wide there, so I had to bring it back, and just watching the airspeed. Now, I didn't actually look up the manual here to see what the recommended speed for rotation was, but I just took a guess on feel for a little over 110, close to 120 knots, or 210 to 220 kilometers per hour, and it leapt straight off the runway. So I'm guessing that's somewhere in the ballpark there, and as you can see, the takeoff is nice and smooth. Gear up, flaps up, and as you can see on the back of the joystick at the moment, I am currently adjusting the trim. I was a little nose heavy after takeoff. It wanted to pitch down constantly, but I'm guessing that has more to do with my payload than anything else. So let's actually talk about the payload options here. On the innermost stations 4 and 3, we are carrying a pair of DEFA or DEFA 553 30mm autocannons. Each has, I think, 120 rounds per pod, I think. Regardless, two 30mm gun pods. Hell of a lot of fun to use. You would like more ammunition, but it's a gun pod. What are you going to do about it? It's actually one of two gun pod options, to be perfectly honest. The other one is an ANM3 gun pod, which is also fun. Now, on the middle wing stations, that's stations 5 and 2, we have LR-25 rocket pods. These are containing 50mm ARF 8M3 high explosive rockets. Now, once again, you have actually quite a large list of various rocket pods and rocket combinations you can actually choose. These particular ones are the high explosive variety. There is also an armor piercing variety. 25 rockets per pod, 50 rockets for the pair, and there's still two empty stations at station 6 and 1 on the outer wings between the wingtips and where the rockets are stationed. For this particular load, the outer wingtips have a pair of 500 litre fuel tanks on, You don't have to run with these, but quite honestly, I think the Macchi just doesn't look right unless it's got its wingtip tanks on. So I was going to run with them, even though this is a relatively short flight and there is no way known that I'm ever going to blow through all of this fuel. Anyways, at this point, we are just about on target. Pretty simple target for a first demonstration. It's a series of hangars, trucks, some infantry, and a couple of boats that are docked just offshore. So, first things first, we're going to get the HUD organised. Now, once again, the recording software wasn't recording the cursor for this, but I am actually clicking this. Simple enough to turn the HUD on. It's a simple matter of flicking it up and then turning the brightness dial up to maximum. So, nice and easy there. The HUD initially is a little hard to see, but I have got it contrasted right against the horizon line, but you'll see it as I drop the nose down. Now, what's interesting with the Macchi is you don't just have one HUD reticle option. You've actually got a couple that you can choose from. Now, I will be honest, without looking it up, I'm not entirely sure what each of these reticles is primarily designed for. I'm sure there is probably a specific purpose for each reticle, but for the life of me, I can't figure it out, having used all of them in attack runs. As far as I can tell, they're all calibrated to about the same point. They all indicated about the same area. It's just whichever one that you prefer to look at while you're blowing shit up seems to be the appropriate one to actually pick. I haven't found any advantage from using any one reticle over the other, so I tend to just use this one here, which tracks to the horizon. Sometimes I flick through to the more open one if the target area is a bit obscured, and I'm thinking the HUD's probably going to block me up a little bit, but overall I don't think it really matters, but it is a really cool option nonetheless. And at this point we've just done our flyby of the target area, and I'm just bringing it back around to line up with the docks. Now, the target here is supposed to represent a small, I suppose a drug cartel warehouse or something along those lines. It's 3 hangars. It's 3 hangars in a row, a series of trucks, some dock boats and some infantry. Nothing too complex. Anyways, arming the weapons. Flick the master arm switch, which is marked master arm, and then just flick the pylons that you actually want to use on. When you pull the trigger, death comes out. It's really that easy. So I want to use just the 30mm cannons for the first pass, because I'm going to go for the boats that are docked just outside of where the hangars are. So do one long pass through there with the 30mm cannons, and then I can flick over to the rockets. So just holding the nose up. You don't have to worry about steep dive angles in this particular aircraft because of its, quite frankly, bonkers levels of maneuverability. Being an aerobatic aircraft and a training aircraft, pulling out of steep dives is just what this thing does. It is fun. Right, so, nose down on target. You can see the 3 hangars are just ahead. Now the boats are docked just to the right hand side of that little, the little curve. Continue out the other side. I'm just doing a nice long arc away at this point just to make sure I'm out of any return fire. While they don't have any direct anti-aircraft defences, small arms fire from the infantry will mess you up if you get close enough. But anyway, switch over to the rocket pods. So we just turn the gun pods off and select the switches for the pylons, or the switches associated with the pylons that carry the rockets. It's really as easy as that. This has possibly the simplest weapons management system that I've seen on any aircraft inside of DCS. And while yes, it is modded, this is how its weapons management operates in real life. Press the button, pull the trigger. If you don't want anything to fire anymore, flick the master arm off, nothing will shoot. It couldn't be any easier. Anyways, lining up for the rocket run. Now the rockets are ranged out at around 600 meters roughly, so I want to get fairly close on release. And nailed the first hangar with the first shot. As you can see, I have flown a few attack runs in this thing, just practicing and getting used to its systems. And it really is easy to learn. I think just about anybody, even somebody who's inexperienced with DCS, could sit back and learn this aircraft from start to finish in a couple of hours tops. I mean, I've got to say, I have no idea if the mod developers have any plans to try and turn this into an officially released module in DCS. I don't know. I haven't heard anything on that at all. But in my opinion, they should at least inquire about it. This is very, very, very well done. I mean, I would pay for this. Although, that being said, that is one of the fantastic things for you guys with this not being an official module. You can just download the Mackie. In fact, I should have a link to it down in the video description down below. And you can just play it right now. And you don't have to have any modules in DCS at all. Just install the mod on and away you go. Now, I'll warn you in advance, the website is in Italian, but the aircraft itself is in English and comes with an English manual. I haven't read the manual. Like most DCS aircraft, I don't touch the manual until I actually reach a point where I absolutely need to. I prefer to muddle through. I tend to learn better that way, but that's how I do it. If you like to read through the manuals, there is a fully English manual there for you to go through as well. And as you can see on the switches and the markings inside the plane, it's all easily understandable. So at this point, I'm just... The target's been pretty much peeled over. I don't think there's much alive down there. I'm just emptying the guns, emptying the rockets, and making sure I've got no ordnance left before I go back home. And, yeah, just pulling some high-angle maneuvers as we're doing it, because, well, it's an aerobatic aircraft as well. And there we go, that's all the rockets done. And that's flicking over to the gun pod so we can get rid of the last of this 30mm ammunition before we go home. And with that, the cannons are dry too, so it is time to go home. Alright, so landing the Mackie. Now, once again, I didn't go through the manual at all in the slightest, so I'm doing everything by feel because of course I am. That's just what I do. That being said, the Mackie is a jet trainer, and it's a very good jet trainer. It's almost idiot-proof, which is fantastic because of course you know I'm going to test that. Anyways, my pattern altitude around the runway was around about 2,400 feet, descending down to 2,000 feet roughly in the turn. This is, of course, too high. I should have been much lower, but this also wasn't a mistake. I was still getting used to the descent rate of the aircraft. In future, I'd probably make my approach and pattern at about 1,500 feet and descend down to 1,000 feet before making my turn onto final. Once again, this, of course, isn't by the book. This is just what the plane feels like to fly. Landing it is a little bit odd, though. I don't know if you noticed during the shots while we were taxiing at the start, but the Mackie sits really, really low to the ground. Much lower than most of the fighters that you're used to flying. So when you bring the Mackie into land, you always, well at least so far, every single time I've brought it into land, I have this moment right before touchdown where I actually question whether or not I remembered to drop the landing gear, because it does feel like you're about to put the belly on the ground just because of how low the aircraft sits. Anyways, wheels down, flaps down was at about 180 knots, currently at about 150 at the moment. Now 150 knots sounds probably a little bit too fast, and it actually sort of feels a little bit too fast for the aircraft as well. That being said, you'll hear I added a little bit of power just then. The aircraft was starting to dip and I could feel a stall sort of coming on into the wings, so a little bit of power just to maintain 150 and then just fly it down to the runway. A little bit of wheel screech as we touch down, but nothing major. HUD goes a little bit crazy, gets annoying, but it's simple enough to deal with. Once you've got the aircraft nice and stable, just flick the switch for the HUD to make it disappear. No nose wheel steering active at this point, just using the toe brakes to keep the aircraft stable, and it works quite well. If you start drifting a little bit in one direction or the other, just ease off on the opposing toe brake and the nose just lines up. Once you drop down to acceptable speed, nose wheel steering on, and off to the parking spaces. So yeah, landing this thing is a piece of piss as well. Even if you sort of mess it up and get your approach a little bit too high, it's easy enough to recover. You have the air brakes there as an option if you need them. I'll tell you now, I didn't really feel in most cases that I did. The aircraft was easy enough to control. The landing does feel oddly fast, and I'm not sure why that is, because really 150 knots isn't all that quick. I mean, we're talking 270 kilometers an hour roughly for a touchdown in an aircraft. That being said, that might just be me. Anything slower than 150 knots, the aircraft does feel uncomfortable, and I don't like the feeling. But again, that just may be me. But anyway, that's the basics of the MB-339 Macchi. I love this goddamn plane. I really do. This is a fantastic little mod, and because it's a mod, fantastic news for you guys, this one's free. So, linked in the video description down below if you'd like to download it and take it for a spin. You'll also find the names of the development team in the video description down below, and expect to see the Macchi on channel again in the very near future. Probably a couple more times, actually. This thing's too much fun to fly to not see exactly how far I can actually take it, and I love flying at low altitudes. I want to do some real low altitude in the mountain CAS missions in this thing. I think that could be a hell of a lot of fun. Anyways, guys, hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you very much for watching. Hope you guys enjoy the mod, download it, and have a great play with it. And until next time, remember to click that like button if you did, share and subscribe if you'd like to see more, and as always, take care.